If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you know how much I enjoy having a good cup of coffee while I'm out here in the woods. So when the company GEARTRON reached out and offered to send me their PORTBREW system, you knew I was going to say yes. If you want to find out more about it, keep watching. Before we get started, I do want to thank the company GEARTRON for reaching out and offering to send me their PORTBREW coffee brewing system so that I could share it with you. So at the time of the recording, this is still in Kickstarter, and so there are still some deals to be had. I don't know yet what the actual retail price of this product will be once the Kickstarter is over with. What I thought I would do is just take a moment to show you what's all inside of this system, and it is pretty much complete except for the coffee and the water you're going to need, and then we'll set it up and make some coffee. All right, I'm going to try and do this while in the seated position. There's a number of things inside of here, and I don't want to lose any onto the ground, but let's get started and see how well I do. So it is a semi-hard case, as you can see. It has a bit of weight. It's about 2 pounds, maybe 3 ounces. I'll give you the rest of the specifications as far as weight and dimensions in the video description. So let's open up and see what you get inside. So the first thing you need to know, it's a PORTBREW coffee brewing system, pour over style, and that's the most important thing. And really, pour over style is one of the most versatile styles and ways of making coffee, because there are so many variables that you get to control and determine the quality of the cups the way you like it. So inside you're going to get a number of things. First off, undo the strap. Probably the single most important thing that makes this a portable brewing system or a pour over system is the pour over device. So this is a silicone pour over device. It has a hard plastic base on it. I'll show you how it all works in a moment. I'll talk more about it in a minute. So that's item number one. Item number two is a kettle. Yes, I know this doesn't look much like a kettle, but it's actually a gooseneck kettle, and I'll be showing you how that works in a minute. It has a lid to go on top. Let me set that down. The third piece is a mug. Yeah, actually a mug. It actually has a pour spout on the mug as well. So all made of titanium, everything so far. The next piece is the coffee grinder. And now you're saying, really? You're really going to carry a coffee grinder, electric coffee grinder like that out in the woods with you? Yeah, maybe. Not all the time. Oftentimes I will actually pre-grind my coffee the morning I'm going out to keep it as fresh as possible. But if you're looking to make the freshest possible cup of coffee, you need to take the beans whole with you and grind them when you get there. Yeah, there are portable grinders, like hand-powered ones. This is battery operated. We'll talk about the advantages this has in a few moments' time. Now, the other thing is, maybe you don't have ground coffee with you. You've stopped somewhere, you bought some beans. I don't mean while you're out in the woods, because remember, this is portable for anything. Portable for car camping, portable for traveling on an airplane. I'll talk about traveling with this in a moment on an airplane. So you can take this virtually everywhere. Take it to the office, wherever you want to go. But we'll get back to the grinder in a minute when I finish showing you what else is inside of here. Now, I did mention that the kettle, pick it back up, is a gooseneck kettle. And there's the gooseneck. It actually, you can take it off of the kettle and put a little cap over the end spout so that you can use this as a second mug, or you can leave it on as a kettle. I'll tell you the reason why they decided to go with this design in a moment. It's actually a probably pretty good idea. Inside of the case, a couple more items. One is the instructions. Gotta have the instructions, right? Another one is inside of this little zip pocket here, if I can open it up. Get it, there, Velcro close pocket. USB Type-C charging cable, you expected to see that. And a little brush for cleaning out the inside of the grinder. And finally, you got to have filters. So this is designed, that pour-over device is designed to use either V60 filters, and these are the ones that they send along for samples, or small basket-style filters. They'd have to be quite small. You can use either or. I'll show you how it converts for using one or the other. So those are the filters. I like using V60. It works well enough. I don't have a lot of experience actually using basket filters other than in a big dripper machine. All right, so that's everything that is in this case. What I think I'll do is set up on the ground and go through the workflow process for making a cup of coffee with this system. So in order to make your coffee, you're going to need a couple of things more than just the PORTBREW system. Obviously, you're going to need some water. You're going to need some coffee beans, and you're going to need a way to heat your water up. So I have a little butane stove here and a table combination that I'll be using that for. It also gives me a workspace for setting everything up and going through the work process. I want to come back to the grinder for a couple of minutes. First off, one of the things you need to know is that this is the battery. So the battery is removable from the top and it's rechargeable with a USB Type-C on it. By the way, it has a hook. I don't know why you'd want to hang it, but you could hang this as well. There's a rubber piece on the bottom. What I found that useful for is setting the whole thing upside down. Now, why a removable battery? That's the piece about traveling on an airplane. So you take this apart from your system and you put this in your carry-on luggage, and it meets the guidelines for taking a lithium-ion rechargeable battery on the plane. But so you have to have it with you in your carry-on luggage. So let me put that back on. There we go. So that's back on. The bottom of the device is where all the magic works. So to start with, there is a cup, a collection cup on the bottom for your coffee, and then there's the grinder device, and there's the grinder itself. Everything else is motor and battery at that piece. So your coffee is going to go in here and be ground down through. Now it uses a ceramic burr. So people who know grinders, some have preferences for ceramic, others have preferences for stainless steel. This is a pentagon or pentagonal, so it means there's 5 flutes on the grinder. So for people who know what that's all about, basically it's a grinder, right? And it's going to grind the coffee into a finer powder. Now, in order to determine the size of the grind, on the bottom is an adjustment marker here. So you can turn it. Now, it doesn't really click. It turns pretty freely. And to me, that's a bit of a miss. There is markings on it, but you really kind of have to decide where is the ideal place for you to do this. The way to do that is to, well, a little bit of trial. First off, put it back on. It is clicking now that I have it back on top of the motor. You click it. I'm going to turn it down to tight. Now that's closed, so that's as fine as, well, you can't get anything out at this point. If I open it up just a little bit, then I'm going to get something closer to an espresso grind. For this purpose, I want something that's coarser than that. Not really, really coarse like a French press, but somewhere between an espresso grind, which is like a powder, and something that's French press, which is kind of, coarse. Maybe something in the area like coarse table salt. So you kind of have to experiment and try grinding some beans until you get to the grind consistency you're looking for. And of course, people who use pour-overs know that part of the variable. That's one of the variables that you can control because it will affect the final product in your cup. So what I'm going to do now is take the top off. We're going to put some beans in here, and we're going to get the grinding started. So I'm going to start by putting the collection cup on the bottom. I'm going to put my beans in on top. Now, I thought I'd be actually a little nerdy today, and I brought a set of scales out with me, a little tiny battery-operated set of scales, and I mean they're AA batteries, they're not rechargeable. Very inexpensive, but if you want to be very precise about your coffee, this is what you have to do. I'll put that on top. We'll turn it on. It zeroes out. There it goes. Now my coffee is inside here. Can you imagine what coffee I'm using today? That's right, Rampage. I'm going to put in 15 grams of coffee into the grinder. Oop, can't afford to be doing that, like wasting them. Now I'm just about there, 13, 14, 14.8, 15. All right, 15 grams of coffee. Let me put my coffee aside. I'm going to put the grinder top on this again, so I can now take it off of the... All right, now I've got the coffee grinder all set up with the coffee. Now, it's a double push of the button to grind the coffee, and it will take a bit of time. And I'm actually not going to make you watch this. I'll let it start, and I'll show you the end product. But this is the longest part of the whole process, is grinding the coffee. This is not a fast grinder by any means. So I'll start it going. Oh, what happened there? Turned it the wrong way and loosened it up, sorry. There we go. and it's a bit noisy. All right, there's nothing to do now, but wait till that's finished grinding, and then we'll go on to the next step. All right. It does take a bit of time. I won't try to hide that fact. It takes a couple of minutes to grind that much coffee. Now, just a word on the grinding. The company says that the battery should allow you to grind coffee 40 times before you need to recharge it. I have charged it when I first got it, and I haven't charged it since. And I've got about 10-15 cups of coffee made with this device, enough to get used to using it before bringing it to you. And I've used about a third of the battery's capacity. So 40, yeah, maybe so. It may get 40. I won't know unless I run it right down into zero. But, you know, I don't think most people will actually let it go 40 grinds before they recharge it. I'll probably recharge it when I get home this time. I just wanted to see how long it would go while I was doing the testing phase. Now, the other thing is, in terms of a workflow, if I was at home, in full disclosure, I would have started this process up, put it aside on the counter, and went on with all the other preparation I need to do. In fact, I'd probably have everything else ready to go by the time the grinder was finished grinding up the coffee. That's an idea of just how slow it is. So I'm going to set it aside for a moment. I'll bring it back and pour the coffee in a minute. The next thing I need to do is set up my kettle. So the kettle, as I mentioned, has a spout on that goes on here. This little cap comes off. It does have a little tiny silicone seal down inside. Here is something you have to think about in your workflow. Don't lose it, right? Don't lose it or you'll end up with a kettle, and that's it. You won't have a kettle that turns into a cup. And then you just have to screw the gooseneck spout on and line it up as you do so. That should do it right about there. All right. So now I have my gooseneck kettle. I'll put the locking piece inside of the carrying case because I don't want to lose that. Now I'll put that aside for a moment. Actually, why don't I put the water in it before I put it aside? So I'm putting in, now it'll hold about 375 milliliters of water. I'm not going to put quite that much in it. I only need 250 to make this cup of coffee. But, you know, I want it a little bit maybe for rinsing out the filter before I actually put the coffee in and do everything. So I'll put that onto a boil in a minute. Now, on the side are one of those heat temperature indicators. So as the cup gets hot, this will rise. An orange marker will rise up the side. I think it's a good indication of where you are. I think most people, including myself, won't use it all that often. One, I don't know how accurate it is. And two, the moment you take the heat off, it starts to decline a little bit. Probably I'll bring the water to a rolling boil, and then I'll just take it off the heat if I don't want it that hot and let it stand for a minute or two. So let me just put that aside, bring the cup in. So here is the cup. Now, we're going to set up the pour-over device. I just want you to see the pour-over device. Very much like a V60, it has kind of spiral grooves down the side that allows, was supposed to direct the coffee down through. Now, there's some debate on whether that's actually a benefit or not. It should help prevent clogging of the filter at its apex on the bottom. Whether it does or it doesn't, I haven't had a problem. I think that's more a result of how fine you grind your coffee and if you over agitate it when you're actually pouring the water in. So it's working fine for me so far. It's a matter of getting the grind right and using good technique. I did want to point this out. You see when I mentioned the spout actually folds up inside? If I was using a basket filter, then I would leave that little spout folded up inside. Where I'm using the V60 filter, I'm pushing it out. All right, set that up on top. Grab one of my filters. All right, so I'm folding the seam over for the filter. And that's ready to go. Now, next step is to bring the water to a boil because I want to rinse the filter out and preheat the cup up a little bit. So let's get the water onto a boil. I'm using my Camping Moon XD3F butane stove. Let me turn that on. I'll Put the kettle on. That's going to take a minute to come to a boil. I'm going to tell you this. You need gloves. You absolutely need gloves or something to grab onto the handles once they get hot. So I'll just let that go for a minute, and when the kettle comes to a boil, that's when we'll come back. Let's bring the cup filter back in. Remember I said this does get hot. It's made of titanium. It will get hot. And I'm just going to give the filter a bit of a pre-rinse and warm up. Don't need to use too much water for that. Not too much at all. It only takes a second or two. All right, I'm bringing my scales back into the picture here in a moment. So next step, dump out the water. Put that back on. Now I can put my coffee in. Give you an idea where I am in coarseness as far as the coffee goes. Now I'm going to, again, be a little nerdy. I'm actually creating a bit of a divot in the center of that. Put my glove back on. I'll actually put everything on the scale. And if you're saying, Mark, this is crazy, you're actually going through all those steps out here in the woods just to make a cup of coffee. I am for demonstration purposes. No, I don't do this every time I come out. I wanted to show what you could do, maybe if you're at home and you really are fussy about your coffee, that you could actually do this at home or anywhere with just the addition of a set of scales or something. All right, so the coffee water is at the right temperature. I'm aiming for about 30 grams of water, twice whatever the weight of the coffee is in. Now, can you see that bubbling up maybe? I'm not sure that's going to show up. That's the CO2 off-gassing from the coffee, a nice fresh coffee. And I'm going to give it a little agitation just to make sure all the coffee gets wet. And maybe 30 or 40 seconds. Yeah, there's still some bubbling taking place. Nice fresh coffee. All right. Now, your own preferred method, how you do this, you can do this in one continuous stream until you get to the amount of water you want in there, or you can break it into two more halves. So I'm actually closer to 33 grams of water went in so far. So I'm just going to pour some more water in, starting at the center, working my way to the outside. I'm aiming for 250 grams of water, 1 full cup. No rush to do this. I'm probably a little faster than I would be if I was at home, only because I'm trying to keep the videos to a reasonable length. Now, so this is where the gooseneck kettle comes in. Look at the precision I'm getting for pouring the water in. It allows me to be even right across, well, just a little bit more and that's it. Even right across the whole bed of coffee, prevents excessive agitation so the grinds don't clog the filter at the bottom. That's it. I'll let it continue to pour through, and once it's finished pouring through, we'll wrap this video up. All right, let's try the coffee. Very nice. Hard to go wrong with Rampage coffee, you know. Okay, I want to go through my thoughts for the PORTBREW system from GEARTRON, the pros and the cons. Now, none of the cons are deal breakers. They're just things I think it's worth you being aware of. I've already made the company aware of, and we'll see whether or not these are things that they will take into consideration for the final production model or not, or maybe a second generation. All right, so we're going to start with the pot itself. Now, maybe I should start with about what it is I did in terms of measuring coffee. I don't measure coffee, weigh coffee when I'm making it out here in the woods. That's something I do at home, not even at home all the time, because I know from experience how big a scoop of coffee weighs how much. And that's what I do out here in the woods, so I have that experience with me. I wanted to show that if you're trying to be precise, and a lot of coffee people, myself most of the time, are trying to be that precise so that you can get a consistent brew from cup to cup. That's the whole point of doing that. But I want to mention the ratio of 15 grams of coffee and 250 grams or 250 milliliters, or 1 cup, however you want to say it, it's all the same, of water. That's a standard starting point, and that's what I like to start with when I'm using something new. New coffee, new grinders, new brewing system, I'll start with that, and then I'll alter it, either up the coffee, down the coffee, up the water, down the coffee, change the grind size, but those are the variables I work with. But you got to start somewhere. That's why I go 15, 250. That's the reason I did it that way. All right, now the kettle. What a great concept this is, to be able to use a a gooseneck spout kettle like this gives you all the control that you're looking for on a pour over. And that's the reason these were designed, is for the control. You get a very even distribution of water and without creating a whole lot of turbulence in the coffee inside of the brewer. The reason you don't want all that turbulence is because the coffee will separate, the fine stuff will go to the bottom, the larger particles will go to the top, and the fine stuff will clog the filter up, and then it takes forever for the coffee to go through, and it will negatively impact the flavor of your end cup. So that's the reasons for it. Now, you may not agree with that, but that is the reason most people like to use a gooseneck kettle. And the reason they made it a detachable gooseneck kettle is two things. One, if that had been fixed on there, not able to come off, that would be a hard thing to pack away in that little case, or any case. You know, this spout could get bent or damaged. It could poke through the side of a bag in your backpack. So I think that was a clever idea, being able to remove the spout. The con with that is, don't lose the cap that turns this into a mug. Otherwise, you'll always just have a kettle. So you do have to be careful in your workflow. Where do you put the little cap that replaces on this? Otherwise, like I said, you're just going to have a kettle. Now, why did they even bother with that? Well, there's a couple reasons. The idea is, when you make a pour-over coffee using this system, you can make enough coffee in this cup that the pour-over device was sitting on, that when you're finished, you can take the spout off, put the cap on, pour some of it back into this, which is now a mug, and share it with somebody. Not going to happen with me. 250 milliliters of water, 1 cup of coffee, that's not enough, or barely enough for me. It's enough for a nice small cup of coffee. Unless you made it extra strong with extra coffee in there, and you made a really strong cup that you wanted to water down, yeah, this is not the thing to do that with. So here's my thoughts on, there's actually another point. I've tried that. I emptied the water out of this while this is still hot, and even though it's titanium, it does hold heat for a little while. Trying to unscrew this little piece here while it's hot, the metal is binding up and it's almost too hot to hold. You have to have gloves on in order to do that. I've seen pictures of people doing it with their fingers. Well, it wasn't hot when they were doing it, I can tell you that. So that's just something to be aware of. So I will put it on and off. I won't lose it. I have a separate cup. That's great. But I don't know that I'd ever use the kettle as a cup for myself. Now, let's look at the cup. The cup itself has a formed spout on the side where I drink. The purpose of that is to pour this coffee back into the converted kettle to mug if you wanted to share it with somebody. When I looked at that, I really thought, I'm not going to enjoy drinking from that spout. Turns out I don't mind at all. I really didn't think I'd enjoy it. I thought it'd just be in the way, but it's not a problem. So that's not even really a con. It's just something to be aware of. When you look at it, you're thinking, that's not going to work for me. It works out okay. There is one con here, though. The kettle and the mug are two different sizes, or volumes. That's the thing to say. Doesn't look like it, but the mug actually will hold more liquid than the kettle will. So, point being, this doesn't fit on top of the mug. why they didn't make them the same size so that you could use the cap off of your kettle to keep your coffee hot once it was poured, I'm not sure. Now, the volume difference is very light. I think the only reason there's a volume difference is I think the cup is a little taller than the kettle itself. But the diameter is a little smaller for the cup than it is for the kettle. GEARTRON, please just change the size of the mug to fit the kettle so the cap can be shared back and forth, or add a second cap, one for the mug so I can keep my coffee hot. It's titanium, right? It's not going to stay hot very long if it's not double-walled, and it's not a double-walled mug. All right, those are the pros and cons as I see it. Now, you may have issue with the grinder. It works. That's what I'm going to say about it. It's a bit noisy, and it takes a long time. What's the alternative? A hand grinder. And I have a hand grinder, one that I've reviewed on this channel from Fire Maple. I weighed it the other day. They're the same weight. It was hard to believe. I thought the hand grinder would weigh less. They're not. They're the same weight, about 1 pound. So that is a pound of weight. You could leave the grinder at home if you want. Just take the kettle and the mug and put your coffee, maybe a bottle, what do you call it, a canteen of water inside of there if you wanted to take up that space, pre-grind your coffee. Yeah, you could do that. That would also work. But the point is that you can grind your coffee fresh just before you make your cup. And that's the idea of the system. Okay, those are my thoughts on it. The few pros and cons, nitpicky things at best probably, but I just wanted to put them out there for you to consider. Now, this being in Kickstarter, I cannot tell you what the final price will be. I'm hoping that the GEARTRON people will respond to me, and if they do, before I get this video up and out to the public, I'll put it in the video description. Otherwise, you'll have to watch the Kickstarter yourself. But it's worth looking at the Kickstarter to see what kind of deals you can get on it, if it's something you think you would enjoy using. Okay, that's everything I have. You can give me all the questions you want. I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. If you have any other comments, add those as well. The Kickstarter link and all the specifications for this will be in the video description. Until next time, get out and explore and take that path less travel, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.